After marrying Silas West, the world's most idolized rock star, I became the most envied civilian wife on the internet. Silus was the ultimate anomaly in the industry. He avoided scandals, never chased clout, and lived entirely for his music. His chart-topping single, January Embers, was a hauntingly beautiful ballad he wrote for me. It played in every coffee shop and car radio from coast to coast. In a recent Rolling Stone interview, he said, "My heart has only ever beat for one person, Rose. But there was a secret I kept buried deep, one I would never dare tell him." Rose was actually my sister's name. Backstage at the Staples Center, I was staring, lost in thought, at the new lead guitarist. "See something you like?" Silas appeared behind me out of nowhere, his voice a low, melodic vibration. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. "Is he better looking than me?" "Impossible," I said, tilting my head back to smile at him. "He doesn't even have a tenth of your charm." Silas's expression remained mock stern. "Only a tenth?" I softened my voice, leaning into him. "He's not even a shadow of a single hair on my husband's head." Satisfied. That finally coaxed a smirk from him. He picked up a strawberry from a nearby fruit platter and held it to my lips. "Since you're being so sweet, I'll have to give you your real reward tonight." All night. I felt the heat rush to my cheeks instantly. Just then, his assistant rolled in a small cart with a cake. The topper read, "To Rose." I froze. He had been in rehearsals for 10 hours straight, yet he still remembered. "Happy birthday, baby." Silas's eyes held a galaxy of tenderness. I stared at the flickering candles, at the man who loved a woman who didn't technically exist, and closed my eyes to make a wish. When the lights came up, Silas reached out and wiped a smudge of frosting from the corner of my mouth with his thumb, then naturally licked it off. "Oh, come on," the bassist groaned from across the room. "West, the cake is for everyone, but I guess the frosting on Rose's face is your private reserve?" Silas just arched an eyebrow and pulled me closer into his side. The room erupted in laughter. Outside, the muffled roar of 40,000 fans chanting his name vibrated through the floorboards. As Silas turned to head toward the stage, he ruffled my hair, leaving it a mess. My manager, sitting across from me, couldn't help but chime in. "To think, the man who's notoriously impossible to handle, the Silas West, is actually just a golden retriever for you. Honestly, Rose, I don't think anyone else on this planet could have tamed him." I forced a smile, my heart heavy. When no one was looking, I quietly took the T.O. Rose topper and dropped it into the trash can. They didn't understand. Rose was my sister, and I was just a ghost inhabiting her life. My sister, Bianca, was the legitimate heiress of the sterling corporate empire. Tess, was the family's dirty secret the illegitimate daughter kept in a drafty apartment on the outskirts of the city. We weren't from the same mother, but we looked enough alike to be twins. My father had forced me to spend years mimicking Bianca's cadence, her posture, her every move. At first, it was just to fill in for her at boring charity events or press junkets she didn't want to attend. But then, they pushed me in front of Silas West. The reason was as absurd as it was cruel. Years ago, when Silas was first asked about his dream girl in an interview, he had mentioned how much he admired Bianca's poise. At the time, my sister was having a public spat with her billionaire boyfriend, Preston Whitlock. To spite Preston, she flirted with Silas through the media, causing a firestorm of speculation. But a week later, she and Preston made up. The Sterling Group stock had skyrocketed during that brief romance. My father wasn't about to let that profit margin slip away. He ordered me to keep the flame alive, sending me on dates with Silas in her place. And that was how, by a series of tragic accidents, I ended up married to the man. Silas was a god among men. He was devastatingly handsome, with a sharp, arrogant edge that softened only for me. In an industry full of players, he was a ghost. He had never been in a serious relationship before us. I felt like I had won the lottery, but the ticket was stolen. During the first few months of the marriage, I lived in a state of constant terror, waiting for the moment he'd realize I wasn't the girl he thought I was. But slowly, I let my guard down.
He was too good to me.
He loved me with a ferocity that made me feel that, even if the truth came out tomorrow and he ended up hating me, it would have been worth it just to have known this version of him. My only wish was for Bianca and Preston to stay locked in their toxic, high society bubble forever. If they stayed together, I could stay with Silus. I could keep being Rose. The concert reached the encore. The Jumbotron cut to the VIP section. The camera was supposed to land on me, but for a split second, it lingered on a couple of few rows back. In the midst of the deafening music, my sister's boyfriend, Preston, was passionately kissing a woman I didn't recognize. The giant screen magnified every detail. The way Preston's hand gripped the back of the woman's neck. The unmistakable shimmer of a massive pink diamond on her ring finger. I remembered that diamond. It was the rare stone Bianca had been obsessed with for months. She'd seen it in a Christie's catalog and talked about nothing else. My world went black. Knowing Bianca's temper, if she found out Preston was keeping a woman on the side, giving her that diamond, she would burn the whole world down. The camera finally found me, and I quickly looked down, pretending to reach for a tissue. But in that last second, I caught Preston's reflection in the screen. He looked stunned, realizing he'd been caught. I spent the rest of the night in a haze of anxiety. On the ride home in the darkened SUV, I clung to Silus, burying my face in his neck and refusing to let go. I was terrified that if I loosened my grip, this stolen dream would finally shatter. The night was intense. I was more desperate, more active than I had ever been, and it pushed Silus to a point of near losing control. "I have to be in the studio all day tomorrow," he murmured against my skin, his voice thick with sleep and satisfaction. "I'm going to miss you." "I'll miss you too," I whispered. "You say it like you're already gone," Silus said, his eyes searching mine in the dark. "Say you'll be here when I get back." "I'll be here." He reached out and tucked a stray hair behind my ear, then handed me a black card from the nightstand. "If you get bored, go buy something pretty. Anything you want." I didn't care about shopping. I planned to stay home and learn how to cook his favorite meal, honey balsamic glazed ribs, the way my mother used to make them. I wanted to give him something that was truly mine. But the next day, it wasn't a text from Silus that arrived. It was a call from my sister. Preston's affair hadn't stayed a secret for long. Bianca demanded I meet her at the family estate immediately. I hadn't seen her since the wedding. She looked haggard, her usual polish cracked. "He's cheating," she spat the moment I walked in. "Who?" I played dumb. "Preston. He's been sleeping with some new assistant for 3 months." I didn't understand how she found out. I had made sure the concert footage was scrubbed from the internet, and Preston wasn't stupid enough to tell her. Seeing my confusion, she laughed bitterly. "You remember that pink diamond? The one from the magazine? I finally decided to buy it for myself as a birthday gift. The jeweler told me it had already been sold to Preston." She took a shaky breath. I tracked the delivery address. It wasn't our house. It wasn't the office. It was some condo LD never heard of. I went there. I saw them. Her eyes suddenly snapped to mine, sharp and predatory. "I've changed my mind, Tess. I want it back." My breath hitched. "What?" "I thought I had it all figured out," she said, her words like a chisel hitting stone. "Silus was a star, sure, but he's an orphan. No family connections, no old money. Too much risk. Preston was stable. He was one of us. We grew up together." She sighed, pacing the room. "I always liked the bad boys, the ones I thought I could tame. I thought 15 years of history meant something." She stopped and looked me dead in the eye. "I was wrong. Preston is a pig. Silus, on the other hand, he's become the biggest name in the world, and he treats you like a queen. I want my place back." My heart sank into the pit of my stomach. "Tess, that life belongs to me. It's time to switch." I stood there, trembling. "But we've been married for a year. He knows me." Bianca laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Does he? He fell for me. You're just the stand-in. A body double." Her words tore open the box of memories I'd tried so hard to bury. I thought of the glass case in Silas's study. Inside was an old, cheap hair clip that Bianca had thrown away years ago. I thought of his new album title, The B-Sides. I had tried to convince myself it was just a musical term, but I knew Bianca's middle name started with B. And then there were the lyrics to January Embers. The way you looked in the falling snow, a grace I'll never let go. Silas and I had never seen the snow together. I'd also found an old book of poetry in his nightstand with a letter tucked inside. The opening line was, "To my golden girl." I hadn't had the heart to read the rest. He had always been in love with the radiant, untouchable Bianca. Every ounce of tenderness he showed me, every soft touch, was meant for the girl he thought I was. Bianca watched the color drain from my face and soften her tone, though her eyes remained like ice. "You feel guilty, don't you? Living a lie? Be a good girl and give it back. You can go deal with Preston for a while, keep him distracted while I settle back in with Silus. I'll make sure you're compensated." "No," I whispered. "I won't do it. No." Bianca's voice rose. "Tess, let's be real. Your mother's medical bills? The dialysis? The imported meds? My father paid for all of it. Your mother was a homewrecker, and we still kept you both fed. You owe us. You know your place. Don't make me remind you of it." Every bit of defiance I had was crushed under the weight of the truth. Silus didn't love me. He loved a phantom. I lowered my head, my voice cracking.
"Fine.
We'll switch." I brought Bianca back to the villa late that night. Before I left, I tried to give her the details. He can't have dairy for 2 hours before a recording session. It messes with his vocal cords. The water in his thermos should never be over 120 degrees. His stomach is sensitive. Don't let him drink black coffee on an empty stomach. And he hates sleeping in total darkness. Always leave the dim light in the hallway on. Ugh, shut up. Bianca snapped. Are you his wife or his nanny? Does he not have people for this? She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. He needs a woman, Tess, not a maid. Trust me, I won't need to do any of that to keep him obsessed with me. She was so confident. As we reached the front door, I saw Silus coming out of the house. I instinctively ducked behind a stone pillar, watching from the shadows. He ran toward her, a bright, genuine smile on his face. He took her hand and pulled her into his arms. Bianca buried her face in his chest, hugging him tight. Silus froze for a second, a look of mild surprise on his
face.
But then he softened, resting his chin on her head. Back so soon? And empty-handed. I had told Bianca about the shopping trip he'd suggested. She played it cool. I'll go tomorrow, babe. I just wanted to come home to you. Why don't you hold on to the card for now? Silus looked at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. That's the first time you've called me, babe. Bianca lowered her gaze, acting shy. Is it?
Sorry.
I won't do it again if you don't like it. Silus immediately tightened his grip. No, I like it.
Keep doing it.
I love hearing it from you. Bianca said something else, her voice a flirtatious purr, and Silas's laugh drifted through the night air. They walked into the house together, arm in arm. My heart hit rock bottom. The fake could never compare to the original. Bianca was clearly better at being the woman he wanted than I ever was. I had been greedy, wanting every bit of sweetness he offered, but I was never the intended recipient.
I didn't even get to say goodbye.
That night, back at my father's house, I didn't sleep. My mind was a loop of every moment I'd spent with Silus over the past year. I cried until my pillow was soaked, finally drifting into a fitful sleep at dawn. The next morning, a loud, aggressive knocking at the door woke me. I opened it to find Preston Whitlock, looking like he'd been on a 3-day bender. What do you want? I stood in the doorway, blocking him. I fired the assistant, he said, his voice raspy. I expected him to beg for forgiveness, to plead for Bianca, to take him back. But his next words caught me off guard. Bianca, let's just call it. We're done.
Done?
He was breaking up with her?
He wasn't here to
crawl back to his golden girl? I didn't know whether to feel sorry for Bianca or just exhausted by the whole mess. I stayed silent. He looked at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. What? No screaming. No throwing things. When I still didn't speak, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a check.
Here.
This should cover whatever. Let's just make this a clean break. If I took the check, it meant the breakup was official.
If I
Didn't, Bianca would lose her mind when she found out. I couldn't make this choice.
keep it, I said.
Preston went rigid. In his mind, Bianca was a woman defined by her appetite for luxury. She had never turned down a check in her life. This was new. Suddenly, he grabbed my arm. Come on, let's go for a walk. We need to talk about this. I didn't have the energy to fight him, so I followed him out. We hadn't gone a block when a teenager on a bike came flying down a steep driveway straight toward Preston. Watch out, I yelled. I grabbed his arm and pulled him back, but he still tripped, his knee slamming into the concrete steps.
His dress.
Slacks tore, and blood began to bloom through the fabric. The kid on the bike didn't even look back. He just sped off. I knelt down immediately, my brow furrowed. Are you okay? Can you move it? I couldn't just ignore him, even if he was Preston. Preston looked down at me, his expression shifting from pain to something else. Something intense. I'm fine, thanks. The way he looked at me in that moment was strange, like he was seeing me for the first time. A few days later, I saw on the news that Silas had gone to San Diego for a 3-night residency. Strangely, he hadn't taken Bianca with him. In the past, Silas hated being away from home for more than 24 hours. If he had to travel, he always insisted I come along. My thoughts were interrupted by a call from Bianca. She sounded agitated. Tess, what the hell is wrong with him? What are you talking about? Silas. He hasn't touched me, she hissed. I've tried everything. Hints, lingerie, everything. He just looks at me like I'm a stranger and says he's tired. A tiny, wicked spark of joy lit up in my chest. But I kept my voice flat. Maybe he's just stressed. He was never too stressed for you, she snapped.
Tell me.
What did you do? How do you get him going? I didn't do anything. I just existed and he couldn't keep his hands off me. If I told her that, she'd think I was rubbing it in. He likes it when things are simple, I lied. Simple? I tried simple. Before he left for San Diego, I even bought some of those ridiculous outfits you used to wear, the soft sweaters and the no makeup look. You know what he said? What? He said I looked like I was wearing a costume. Then, he went asleep on the sofa. I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing out loud. He's probably just focused on the shows, I managed to say. There was a long silence on the other end. Fine, she grumbled. Anyway, what's happening with Preston? I told her Preston wanted to break up. She let out a string of curses. Don't you dare agree to it. String him along. And make sure you keep that check he tried to give you. I'm not losing both of them. Sure, I said dismissively. I didn't care what happened to Preston. And I had a feeling Preston wasn't going to be as easy to manipulate as she thought. 2 weeks later, Preston asked to meet me at the Grove. He said he had something important to discuss. I arrived early. The mall was packed, the central plaza buzzing with people. Huge digital screens were flashing an ad for a luxury watch brand. I suddenly realized why the brand sounded familiar. Silus was their global ambassador. And he was here.
Today.
For a promotional event. Panic flared in my chest. I pulled my hat down low and adjusted my face mask. I should leave. I should turn around and run. But I missed him. The longing was like a physical ache in my bones. Just one look, I told myself. From a distance. He took the stage. He looked thinner, his jawline sharper, but under the stage lights, he was still the most captivating thing I'd ever seen. I meant to leave after a minute, but I was rooted to the spot. Then came the fan interaction segment. The host announced they would pick a few random people from the crowd to play a compatibility game with Silus. The crowd went wild, everyone screaming and waving. I turned to push my way out of the throng, but at that exact moment, a spotlight swung across the plaza and stopped dead on me. I froze. Every eye in the vicinity turned toward me. The lady in the hat and the mask. Yes, you. Would you mind coming up to the stage? The host's voice boomed over the speakers. My mind went blank. I wanted to run, but the crowd behind me was a solid wall of bodies. Before I could process a path of escape, a staff member was guiding me up the steps. I kept my head down, trying to bury my face in the collar of my coat. Don't be nervous, the host said with a friendly laugh. Come on, stand right here next to Silus. The game is simple. We'll show you a prompt, you act it out without speaking, and we'll see if Silus can guess it. Let's see how much chemistry you two have. The host nudged me until I was standing less than 2 feet away from Silus. The faint, familiar scent of sandalwood and rain drifted off him. My heart hammered against my ribs, so hard I thought it might burst. The prompts weren't hard. The first one was a fragrance name. I mimicked the motion of spraying perfume on my wrist and then pointed at him. Sandalwood, Silus said instantly. The host chuckled. That was fast. Let's see if you're as lucky with the next one. The second prompt was hot tea. I made a motion of carefully sipping from a cup, then touched my throat and shook my head, a specific gesture he made whenever he accidentally burned his tongue. Hot water, Silus answered, his voice dropping an octave. The host looked surprised. That was a very abstract gesture. How did you get that? Silus didn't look at the host. He was staring at me, his eyes burning with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Even through my mask and hat, I felt like he was peeling back my skin. Intuition, he said into the mic, his gaze never wavering. My pulse was racing. For the next few rounds, he guessed everything perfectly, often before I'd even finished the gesture. The atmosphere on stage shifted. The host joked, "Are you sure you two don't know each other? This level of synchronicity is insane." "No," I said, just as Silas said, "We don't." Our eyes locked for a split second. The host announced the end of the game, and I turned to bolt. But as I reached the edge of the stage, a hand clamped firmly around my wrist. It was Silus. Time seemed to stop. The crowd erupted in screams and flashes. I looked back, trapped in his deep, searching gaze. He didn't let go. For 2 long seconds, we were the only 2 people in the world. Think of his career. I screamed at myself. Think of the scandal. Thank you, I almost tripped, I whispered, loud enough for the nearby mics to catch. I wrenched my hand free and sprinted down the stairs. I ducked into the crowd, pushing past people until I slammed into a solid chest. Someone caught my shoulders, steadying me. I looked up, breathless. Beneath the brim of my hat, I saw Preston Whitlock's face, etched with confusion. "Rose?" He looked toward the stage where Silus was still standing, looking toward the crowd. "What was that? Why are you running?" I couldn't find my voice. I just shook my head, gasping for air. Preston studied me for a few seconds, then stopped asking questions. "It's too loud here. Come with me." He led me to a high-end restaurant on the top floor. The place was empty. He had clearly booked the entire floor. He sat me down at a window table with a view of the city and pushed a glass of water toward me. "Rose, I've been thinking about what I said." I stared at him, my mind still back on that stage with Silus. "I don't think we should break up yet." I closed my eyes. He was playing the same old games. I remembered Bianca's cold command. "Keep him on the hook." "Fine," I whispered. "Okay." But Preston didn't look happy. He looked complicated. A waiter began serving a multi-course meal. I didn't have an appetite, but I forced myself to take a few bites of the appetizer. "I remember you saying this was the only place in the city that got the black truffle foie gras right," Preston remarked. I took another bite, nodding silently. Preston tapped his fingers on the table, then pointed to a pork chop dish. "Try this. The chef's special recommendation today." I did as I was told. When I put the fork down, Preston's eyes were narrow. "I knew it. You aren't Bianca. Bianca hates foie gras. She thinks it's too many calories. And she would never, under any circumstances, order a pork chop in a French restaurant. She thinks it's low class." He leaned forward. "You're Tess." I froze. How did he know? What did he want? 1,000 terrifying scenarios played out in my head. Preston saw my panic and actually laughed. "Relax," he said, swirling his wine. "I have a secret for you. Something about your mother." I knew better than to trust him. "What do you want, Preston?" He set the glass down, his eyes sharp. "The deal is simple. From now on, you date me as Tess. No masks, no pretending to be her." I stared at him. "Why?" "Because it's interesting." And because the secret I have, it's enough to ruin the Sterling family's reputation forever. It's enough to put Bianca in her place. I didn't know why Preston was willing to turn against the girl he'd grown up with. I'd heard rumors that Bianca had caused a scene at his office that cost him a multi-million-dollar deal. Maybe it was revenge. Or maybe he was just bored. Regardless, I needed that leverage. Tell me. Your mother wasn't a mistress, Preston said, his voice low. She was your father's first love. They were engaged before the Sterling family forced him into a strategic marriage. Your mother was already pregnant with you. The hush money they gave her wasn't charity. It was a payoff to keep the rightful heir hidden. Bianca was actually born 5 months after you. My hand jerked, knocking over my water glass. I scrambled to wipe it up with a napkin, trying to hide the fact that my hands were shaking. Not a mistress. My mother had spent her whole life under that stigma, believing she was the villain in someone else's story. We had lived in the shadow of a lie crafted by the Sterlings. Do you have proof? Next time we meet, Preston said confidently. My phone started vibrating. It was Bianca. Preston smirked, watching me. I answered. Bianca was hysterical.
Tess.
Get back to the house right now. What happened? Silas is back from San Diego. He wants those honey balsamic ribs you used to make. I tried to make the cook do it, but he says the taste is wrong. He's out at a meeting right now, but he'll be back in an hour. Get here, make the ribs, and then we'll swap back once he's asleep. If you ruin this, I'll kill you. She hung up. Let me guess, Preston said. The golden girl is struggling? You don't have to go, you know. You don't have to be her shadow anymore. I have to go, I said, grabbing my bag. My mother was gone, but Silas was still the most important person in the world to me. Tess, Preston called out as I reached the door. Remember our deal. With me, you're at least yourself. I didn't look back. I ran out of the restaurant, only to find a black SUV idling at the curb. The door opened before I could even call an Uber. A hand reached out and pulled me inside. Silus. The interior was dim, but his eyes were like smoldering coals. My heart leaped into my throat. I tried to channel Bianca's voice. I just finished shopping. I was about to call for a ride. Shopping. His eyes raked over my outfit. Then, who was the girl on stage at the Grove today? Why was she wearing exactly what you're wearing now?
Shit.
I'd forgotten I was still wearing the same clothes. You caught me, I said, trying to sound playful. Surprise? He didn't say anything. He just sat there, watching me. The silence was suffocating. I was about to break when he spoke. How have you been lately? I blinked. Bianca had been with him every day. Was he testing me?
Good.
Just busy. Sleeping well. Have you missed me? He interrupted. Every second I thought. Of course. How much? My phone was buzzing again. I knew it was Bianca. She was waiting for me to cook those ribs. If I went home with Silas now, the whole thing would fall apart. What do you want to do now? I asked. Let's go to a movie, I suggested when he didn't answer. Silence. Fishing?
You always liked that.
I used to tease you about it, remember? He didn't move.
He didn't blink.
He just sat there in the dark. Finally, he looked out the window. It's dark out. Yes, I said. Let's go home then. No, I blurted out. I'm hungry. Let's get a late-night snack first. Where? Anywhere. Just not the house. Driver, Silas said. Take us to the montage. His assistant had already checked him into a suite. Wait, I thought we were getting food? I said, lingering by the door of the hotel room. Silas didn't answer. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, his back to me. He began to unbutton his shirt.
1, 2.
His fingers moved with agonizing slowness. He loosened his tie. I swallowed hard. I knew exactly what this meant. He didn't want food.
He wanted me.
Tess. Wake up, I told myself.
Who is he looking at? Who does he want?
Actually, I'm really hungry, I said, backing toward the door. I'm going to go down to the bistro and grab something. Silas stopped unbuttoning his shirt and turned. His eyes were unreadable. Don't go. What do you want? I'll have it send up.
No.
No, I don't want to be a bother. I need some air anyway. I reached for the handle. I forgot I actually have a spa appointment. I almost missed it. I have to go. I turned the handle, but before I could step out, Silas's voice stopped me. It was cold. Absolute. It's 11 p.m., Tess. Where are you going to find a spa open now? And why are you calling yourself Rose? I froze. He knew. He had known for a long time. I turned around, my heart in my throat. I couldn't do it anymore. The lying, the acting, it was exhausting. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm not Bianca. I'm just her stand-in. I braced myself for the explosion. The anger. The disgust. I had lied to him for a year. I know you always wanted her. I continued, the words tumbling out. I know I'm not the golden girl. I'm not sophisticated or perfect. And now that she's back, I didn't know how else to fix this. Silas just stared at me. He looked like he was in pain. Did you ever love me? He asked. I looked at the floor. If I told him I loved him, it would only make things worse. It would make me look even more pathetic. No, I lied. He didn't try to stop me when I walked out the door. We seemed to have a silent agreement not to tell Bianca about that night. A few days later, Preston asked me to dinner at a private club. He talked about art, about tech acquisitions, about a trip to the Maldives, but he didn't mention the evidence about my mother. You're not eating, he noted. Preston, I said, putting my fork down. The materials. The proof you promised me. That was the only reason I was sitting here. It wasn't a date. He wiped his mouth slowly. It's such a beautiful night. Why ruin it with the past? I promised I'd give them to you. And I will. When the mood strikes me, my heart sank. He was just as manipulative as the rest of them. I spent the next hour in agonizing silence. When we finally left, the autumn air was crisp. It's cold, Preston said, unwrapping his scarf to put it around my neck. It was an intimate, possessive gesture. I stepped back. Before I could finish, a man in a long black trench coat walked toward us. A mask covered half his face, and a hat was pulled low. Excuse me, a familiar voice said. The scent of sandalwood. Silas brushed past Preston, his shoulder hitting him hard as he walked by me without a word. What are you looking at? Preston asked, trying to touch my face. I pulled away, surprised by my own anger. Nothing. Preston laughed, a dry, bitter sound. Tess, you've never actually considered being with me, have you? Preston, I said, my voice steady. If you aren't going to give me the proof, fine. I'll find it myself. You think you can just dig up 20-year-old corporate secrets on your own? Without me, you're nothing. Then I guess I'm nothing. I turned and walked away into the night, the wind whipping round me. I was done being a pawn. The next morning, the world exploded. Silas West critically injured in on-set accident # breaking fans demand answers on production safety # Silas West. The photos were blurry, but horrific. A collapsed stage, a stretcher, and a glimpse of Silas, his face covered in
blood.
The comment sections were a war zone of grief and anger. I called Silas's assistant, my voice shaking so hard I could barely speak. Where is he? Is he okay? The assistant practically barked into the phone. Bianca? You're calling now? He's in the ICU. Internal bleeding, broken ribs, a severe concussion. He's been working himself to death for a month because of you. And all you did was call to ask about his upcoming endorsements? What is wrong with you? Bianca, of course.
She only cared about the brand.
I drove to the hospital in a trance. The entrance was swamped with paparazzi and fans holding vigils. I pulled my hat low and managed to sneak in through a service entrance.
He looked so small in that hospital bed.
Gauze wrapped around his head, his arms bruised and scraped. Every bit of my resolve, my pride, my fear, it all evaporated. I reached out to touch his hand, then pulled back, afraid of hurting him. You idiot, I sobbed. Why did you work so hard? Is it that important? You look terrible, not cool at all. I couldn't stop crying. Silas, I love you. I love you so much it hurts. The phone in my pocket vibrated. It was Bianca. I declined the call. I didn't care if the whole world found out now. I went to the bathroom to get a warm cloth to wipe the dried blood from his face. As I turned to leave, a hand gripped the hem of my coat. Where are you going? Silas was awake. You're back, he rasped. So, I'm an idiot? And you love me? I opened my mouth to explain, but he squeezed my hand. Don't go. I only want you, Tess. He looked at me with clear, sober eyes. The night I came back from the studio, you smelled like perfume you never wear. I looked at you and you looked like Bianca, but my heart was screaming that something was wrong. I started digging. I found out the Sterlings had 2 daughters. I held his hand tightly. But you fell for Bianca first, years ago. I saw the hair clip. I saw the letters. Silas gave a weak, soft smile. When I was in the orphanage, I was a loner. I got bullied constantly. One day, A teacher praised my singing, and the older boys stole my lunch to punish me. I was sitting on the stairs, my stomach aching. And then this little girl ran up to me. She shared her lunch with me, honey balsamic ribs. I never forgot that taste. She dropped a hair clip when she ran away. I kept it for 20 years. The teacher told me her name was Bianca Sterling, so I spent my life chasing that name. But this past month it's been hell, because I realized I didn't love the woman at home. I loved the woman I'd been married to for a year. I asked you if you loved me, and you said no. I thought I'd lost you. Wait, I interrupted. Was it a snowy day?
Yeah.
The biggest blizzard of the year. I started laughing, the tears streaming down my face. It had been the Sterling Group's charity day. Bianca didn't want to go out in the cold, so my father made me go in her
place.
My mother had packed me a special lunch, because she knew I'd be shy. The hair clip was a gift from my father that I'd lost that morning. Silas, the girl in the snow, was me. Silas's lips trembled. It was you. I nodded vigorously. He had been chasing my light all along. I actually wrote you a letter, Silas whispered, his face flushing, complaining about the orphanage. I was too embarrassed to show you. I realized then that if I had only read that letter in the book of poetry, we wouldn't have lost so much time. I had been jealous of myself. Silas pulled me into a weak embrace. I'm so sorry. I called you her name for a whole year. You must have been so hurt. Tess. Tess. You backstabbing little bitch. Bianca burst into the room, her face contorted with rage. Get out, Silas said, his voice hard as steel. Bianca froze, then a twisted smile spread across her face. She held up her phone. She was live streaming. Get out? Oh no. Let's let the world see what their favorite rock star is doing in his ICU bed. The viewer count was skyrocketing. What's happening? Is that Bianca? Who is the other girl? The comments were flying. Bianca, stop it. You'll ruin his career, I yelled. You force me. She shoved the camera in my face.
Slap.
I hit her so hard her phone flew across the room. She stood there, clutching her cheek, stunned. I'm done, Bianca, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You think being a Sterling gives you the right to own people? For 15 years, I did the dirty work you were too refined for. Every charity event you skipped, every press junket you were too hungover for, that was me. I have recordings of every time you told me to impersonate you. I kept them for my mother's sake, but she's gone now. The live stream was still going on the floor. The comments were exploding. A body double? For 15 years? The Sterling family is a fraud. Silas. Bianca cried, turning to him. You love me. I'm the one you wanted. I love the girl who shared her ribs with a hungry boy in the snow, Silas said coldly. Was that you, Bianca? Bianca went silent. She had no idea what he was talking about. Just then, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Preston had finally released the documents. Sterling family scandal. Illegitimate daughter revealed as true heir. Theft of identity and corporate fraud. The evidence was undeniable. The public tide turned in seconds. Bianca collapsed to the floor, realizing her world was ending. Silas looked at me, his eyes full of tenderness. I'm so sorry I didn't recognize you sooner. I almost lost you again. I shook my head, taking his hand. For the first time in my life, I felt like the sun was finally out. That night, Silas posted a single message on his social media. I love my wife. Her name is Tess. The support was overwhelming. The world loved a star-crossed romance, and the story of the hidden girl, who was the true inspiration for his music, became the story of the year. A few months later, as Silas was recovering at home, I asked him, weren't you afraid of the scandal? The career? He ruffled my hair. I was. But I was more afraid of you feeling like I didn't choose you. Standing on a stage is a job. Standing by you is my life. The Sterling Group collapsed under the weight of the fraud. Bianca, unable to handle the loss of her status, eventually checked herself into a private clinic. One evening, I ran into Preston at a bookstore. He looked older, humbler. Thank you, Preston, I said. I was too late, Tess, he said with a sad smile. I should have seen you sooner. I nodded and walked away. I had my own path now. On my birthday, Silas didn't buy a fancy cake. He made one himself. It was a mess of frosting and lopsided layers, but in the center, in shaky chocolate letters, it read, To Tess. Happy birthday, he whispered, kissing my forehead. My Tess. The end.